Good evening and welcome again to St. Michael veterans along with their families and friends. My name is Chris Wiley and I'm a grateful son of this patriotic parish. I answered the call to military service, graduating from the United States Air Force Academy 20 years ago, followed by a decade of active duty, flying the venerable and now difficult to retire A-10 Warthog. Many of you supported my deployments with hundreds of prayers on my behalf. Thank you. You also ministered to my parents, Jim and Karen, allaying their worries in separation from me. This evening, I'm truly humbled to introduce you to United States Air Force Staff Sergeant Retired Johnnie Yellock II. Johnnie is a proud Texan from a dual veteran family. Upon earning his manufacturing engineering degree from Tarleton State, he enlisted in the Air Force to earn his Red Beret, the distinctive mark of an Air Force combat controller. Please Google what these heroes train and do all over the world. It makes flying a jet look like a round of golf. During his second deployment in Paktika Province, Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant Yellock and his team were attacked with a vicious IED, leaving Johnnie severely wounded, but no less determined to serve his country, earning the Bronze Star and Purple Heart for his valor. Today, Staff Sergeant Yellock is pursuing his MBA from SMU's Cox School of Business. He is a member of George Bush's Team 43. He radiates courage and joy. His initials even spell it, to other veterans for whom he tirelessly advocates. Tighten your straps, folks. Here's Johnnie.
Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, I'd like to address you from down here among you. It's difficult to tell a story of humility from up on high. I want to be down here with y'all. I can tell you it was a little difficult to stand up and walk up here just now. I just wanted to continue to stay seated with you in reverent attendance. This is an incredible congregation, an incredible place for y'all to do worship. I've just been blown away and incredibly welcomed since I stepped onto the campus about an hour ago by every single member of this staff that is coordinated to get me here today. So thank you, and I assure you that you're a part of something special here, and I'm glad to share my time here with you this evening. So I come from, as Chris mentioned before, he doesn't give himself enough credit, by the way, for the job that he did. He saved the lives of countless of my friends and my teammates on the battlefield. Real quick, I'd like to get a show of hands for the veterans that we have in the room, either active duty or veterans. Just raise your hand if you served in the armed forces. There's going to be a lot of y'all up front. If you're a spouse of an armed forces member, You're going to get a lot of opportunities to clap. You're going to get a lot of opportunities to clap. If you're the spouse of an armed forces member, or your brother, or your sister, or your father, or a best friend of yours served in the military, keep your hands going up and look around you. I'm trying to make a quick point here, that whether or not you served in the military, you played a vital role in supporting someone who has. The military has touched every single one of our lives, and we are a better nation because of your honorable service, all of you gentlemen, men and women who have chosen service before self. So I was blessed to come from a dual veteran family. My mother, who's seated here in the third row, wave, Mom. My mother was in the Air Force. My mother was in the Air Force for 20 years. She was a radio and television broadcaster. My father was in the Air Force for 27 years. He was a crew chief on F-4s and F-15s starting during the Vietnam era. I was born in the Netherlands. My sister was born in Germany. We lived in Iceland for a couple of years as a kid. So I got to grow up with a real worldly sense of life. I got to immerse myself in different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds, different religions. I consider myself very blessed to have come from a family such as mine. So thank you, Mom and Dad. I grew up mostly here in Texas, in San Antonio. I went to high school here in Keller, Texas, went to Tarleton State, and graduated from college. Got a degree, and when I walked across the stage, I was not filled with that sense of pride or accomplishment that I that I needed for my life. I was intrinsically motivated then for that path of service. And I saw the military, more specifically the Air Force, as my opportunity to service. I chose a career field, as Chris mentioned, that is very unique. I was a combat controller, Air Force Special Operations Command. Vietnam era gentlemen would know it as forward air controlling. So we are Air Force Special Operations. Our job is command and control in the battlefield. Our job is to attach ourselves to Navy SEALs or Army Special Forces teams and deploy with them, go outside the wire with them, run and gun on the ground, kicking indoors, engaging the enemy on a daily basis. But then whenever we are pinned down by a threat that we cannot eliminate with organic team weapons, it's my job to call in the Air Force. So I get to call in fires to bring peace onto the battleground whenever we should need it, from gentlemen like who introduced me, Chris, who flew an A-10 Warthog over the skies. So we told you a lot about my story, and I definitely encourage you, because I don't have much time, to Google what we went through in our training. But I can tell you that in 2 years, we went from 36 guys to only 4 of us graduating and actually becoming combat controllers. In the world, whenever I joined, there were about 400 combat controllers on the planet in 5 different bases. I would deploy for my first time in 2010 to northern Afghanistan. My deployment was pretty tame. I didn't get a chance to engage the enemy like I had hoped for. But what happened was the war came to my parents' doorstep. 2 of my best friends were killed in combat within 13 days of one another, and both of them had a personal relationship with my parents. So my mom and dad went to 2 of my best friends' funerals in 2 weeks' time back home, while their son, was still in a war zone. We have a 1-to-1 dwell ratio. We're deployed for 6 months, come home for 6 months. So 6 months later, I would deploy again, this time to eastern Afghanistan, in a role where I was going to get to take the fight to the enemy. I was attached to an Army Special Forces team, and I was going to get a chance to get some retribution for the friends of mine that they had taken off the battlefield 6 months prior. I was attached to this team, and our job was village stability operations. Our job was to train and provide all the logistical support that the Afghan local police needed to be able to protect themselves and their village whenever America would pull out of the war. So we would drive around to different combat outposts and ensure that they had everything they needed, from uniforms, training, weapons, ammunition, anything that they needed. And on my 10th day in country, July 6, 2011, I was riding in the back of an up-armored vehicle, the second vehicle in our convoy, as a combat controller with GPS devices and 3 radios on my person that needed line of sight with satellites, and so I could communicate with the pilots overhead. I would stand in the bed of the vehicle. These are mine-resistant anti-tank vehicles which are built to withstand the tactics of the enemy, to disperse the IED blast that they could potentially detonate. So I was standing in the bed of the vehicle, and we were picking up inter-team communication from the enemy that they were watching us, and they were wondering what we were going to do. And we were going through a dried riverbed or a wadi, and I placed my hands on top of the vehicle, and as we started to come up and out of that wadi, the IED went off under our vehicle, disabling it and throwing me on top. I looked down, my training kicked in, I could see the bottoms of both of my feet looking up at me. I was losing a good deal of blood from arterial bleed, open fractures on both legs, and I had to continue to put my own tourniquets onto both of my legs to stop the bleeding. Continue to provide amplified guidance to the medevac helicopter to be able to take myself and my teammate off the battlefield that day. My story starts there. That's all background. That's all the tangible stuff. The reason I'm here is to talk about the intangibles. Going from being that fella on the battlefield, the tip of the spear, and a lot of you are familiar with that phrase, the tip of the spear, the one actioning the enemy. Going from being that guy on the battlefield to being the person I am today was an incredible journey of humility. In an instant, I got introduced to every single component that made up our American force for good. I got introduced to every other component of that spear that I was just the tip of. I was nothing without everybody else playing their part in our combined mission, combined objectives. We wouldn't have been able to do anything without them. I would spend the next 3 months in San Antonio in the hospital. I'd had about 20 surgeries by the time I was discharged. And then I would spend the next 2 years at the Center for the Intrepid, also in San Antonio, learning how to walk up and down out of a wheelchair, the process of limb salvage. So war gives us the medical profession a lot of opportunities to figure things out. There were a lot of my friends, my teammates that were coming home in very similar fashion. There were a lot of amputations being done. That was the quickest thing to do. But I was blessed to have been wounded at a time where my prosthetist, my orthopedic therapist, and my surgeon were literally the dream team on the planet, and they came up with this process of limb salvage, which has allowed me, after 31 surgeries to date, to be able to wear adaptive braces to allow me to walk and stand before you, usually in skinny jeans, but I'm wearing a suit tonight. So that joke hits a little better when I'm actually in skinny jeans, but I appreciate the sympathetic laughter there. So that road and that journey is exactly why I've chosen to continue doing what I'm doing today. I had to make a very difficult decision of going from being that well-trained airman on the battlefield to raising my hand and saying that I would retire from the military. It was very difficult for me I saw it as I was choosing self instead of service for the first time in many years. Because that's what all of us have in common. We chose service over self. We put ourselves through incredibly difficult circumstances so that we at home, those that don't see us, don't know our names, can enjoy the liberties and the freedoms that we all enjoy today, such as this freedom to assemble right now. I am so grateful for having my faith and having my family and having my network of individuals solid before I even deployed, because I want to impress upon you how important it is to continually invest in your network, like we are tonight. Continue to invest in those people that you surround yourself, because these are the individuals that are going to be there should you fall. And that's exactly what I had. I was incredibly fortunate to have already had that. I made the decision to retire from the military, and I was immediately blessed with an opportunity to serve others. I started to work in 2 veteran nonprofits and give back to my veteran community and their families. And then I worked for an insurance company where I got out and did marketing and sales and got a chance to share my story and meet a lot of people. I learned very early on that is something that I love at my core. The ability to meet new people, the ability to get to know people from different walks of life. And today I've started, as Chris also mentioned, today I've started going back to school. So I'm getting an MBA in marketing and strategic planning so that I can continue to better myself so that I can have a chance at hopefully bettering other veterans. I want to be able to help transitioning veterans build their own entrepreneurial spirit, be able to set them up for success in their departure from the military. So I get the opportunity to do this and address groups large and small, and it just blows me away. I'm incredibly, no pun intended, I am incredibly blessed to have been welcomed here. That's trickling through the audience there. It's okay to laugh. A lot of us veterans have a pretty decent sense of humor. My license plate actually is a Purple Heart tag that says, "They got me." So I can attest to the fact that, yes, as I said before, the network is the thing that got me through it, but I can also tell you that having a sense of humor, a little bit of humility, the ability to laugh at yourself, recognizing that we can't do it all ourselves, that we need the people that are surrounding us to be able to do great things is what it's all about. And this weekend, we were blessed to be able to thank our veterans in an incredible way, such as this evening. I think we'll continue that after I speak. Yesterday was Veterans Day. I just want to say that I am incredibly blessed to be here because I've already gotten the chance to meet probably more World War II veterans in one place than I've ever had the chance of doing. And you have an incredible congregation. I thank you for your time. I thank you, gentlemen, for being the greatest generation that this country has ever had. Thank you for your service, and thank you all for your support. Thank you.